"Get out of my pool, old man, now." I'm floating in my own backyard when this 19-year-old punk in designer slides decides to evict me from my own property. The sheer audacity hits like a slap. Here's what makes this hilarious. I'm Derek Castellanos, 25 years with Riverside County Sheriff's Department. This entitled brat just ordered a cop off his own land. Kid pulls out his phone, starts filming. "My mom runs this HOA. You're trespassing, loser." I notice the illegal surveillance camera aimed at my pool. Privacy violation right there. The stench of teenage Axe body spray mixing with chlorine nearly gags me, but I stay calm. Professional habit kicks in. Because what this spoiled mama's boy doesn't realize, he just declared war on the wrong sheriff. What would you do if some brat tried stealing your backyard? Drop your revenge fantasies below. And shout out your location. I love seeing where my justice warriors are watching from. Let me back up and explain how I ended up in this suburban war zone. 6 months ago, I was surviving the messiest divorce in Riverside County history. 23 years of marriage obliterated because my ex-wife decided police work was too dangerous, and my buddies were bad influences. Apparently, catching actual criminals wasn't as important as attending her book club discussions about finding inner peace. Yeah, try finding inner peace when someone's shooting at you. So there I was, 52, starting over, desperate for quiet. I'd spent 25 years dealing with gang members who at least had the decency to be honest about wanting to hurt you. Suburban HOAs, I figured they'd be a cakewalk compared to armed drug dealers. Boy, was I wrong. I chose Willowbrook because it screamed peaceful retirement community. Manicured lawns that looked spray-painted green, speed bumps every 40 feet, and an HOA promising enhanced community standards. The house was perfect. Modest 3-bedroom with a pool that sparkled like a Hollywood movie set. First property I'd owned outright. Purchased with divorce settlement money that still smelled like lawyer fees and broken dreams. Walking through those empty rooms, the scent of fresh paint mixed with possibility filled my lungs. My daughter Lucia could visit weekends, maybe transfer schools if things worked out. I was pulling extra security shifts to cover the mortgage, barely home during daylight, but it felt like hope incarnate. Then I discovered the Whitmore dynasty. Regina Whitmore was HOA royalty, 6 years as board president, which in suburbia makes you basically Stalin with a tennis racket. Picture this. Bleached blonde hair defying gravity, Range Rover that cost more than teacher salaries, and a smile colder than a morgue freezer. This woman could find violations in the 10 Commandments. Her husband Gordon was some tech wizard who traveled constantly, bankrolling Regina's neighborhood fascism from whatever digital empire he'd constructed. Guy was practically a myth. I'd lived there 6 months and spotted him twice, both times speed-walking from garage to car like he was dodging paparazzi. But their son Braxton? That 19-year-old mistake was everywhere. College dropout camping in mommy's basement, treating common areas like his personal playground. I'd watched him blast explicit rap music at family pools, park his bright yellow Mustang across handicapped spaces, and generally behave like the world existed for his entertainment. The Whitmores had conquered Willowbrook 8 years earlier, systematically destroying 3 previous board members through legal warfare that would make Pentagon strategists proud. Their method was surgical. Find obscure bylaw violations, weaponize technicalities against anyone questioning their authority, then lawyer up until victims surrendered and fled. I should have recognized the warning signs. How neighbors scattered when Regina appeared like cockroaches when lights flip on. The way conversations died whenever her heels clicked across pavement. The nervous energy following her around like a toxic cloud. But I was focused on healing, working my shifts, coming home to float in chlorinated serenity, listening to filter pumps humming and distant laughter from other backyards. For the first time in years, my blood pressure was dropping instead of spiking every morning. The day war began. I'd just survived a brutal double shift covering vacation time. Exhausted doesn't capture it. I felt like roadkill scraped off hot asphalt. All I craved was 30 minutes of peace in my own private oasis. The water temperature was absolute perfection. That magical point where you can't distinguish skin from liquid silk. Ice cubes chinked against glass like tiny temple bells announcing meditation time. Heat waves rose from concrete like dancing spirits celebrating summer. Then Braxton's shadow fell across my sanctuary. Then came those words dripping with generational entitlement. "This is a private community pool. You need to leave now." That's when reality slapped me awake. I hadn't escaped to peaceful suburbia. I'd invaded a battlefield where enemies wore designer athleisure and drove vehicles worth more than my annual pension. They had no idea they'd just declared war on the wrong sheriff. So there I am, floating in my own pool, staring up at this entitled brat who just ordered me off my own property. The audacity was so thick you could slice it with a rusty butter knife. "I'm sorry, what?" I kept my voice deadly calm. 25 years of interrogating suspects taught me that the quieter you get, the more they start sweating. Braxton puffed up like a rooster in a henhouse. "You heard me, old man. This pool violates community standards. My mom's the HOA president, and she's going to have you evicted by tomorrow." I pulled out my phone, showed him the property deed. "See this official document? Says Derek Castellanos owns this house? That's me. This is my pool, genius." He laughed, like I'd just told him Santa Claus was real. "I don't care about some fake paper. My mom, Regina, runs this entire neighborhood. Those security cameras will prove you're trespassing." That's when I spotted the surveillance camera mounted on a pole, aimed directly at my backyard like some kind of suburban spy operation. The reek of teenage Axe body spray mixing with chlorine made my stomach churn, but I stayed laser-focused. This kid had just admitted to illegal surveillance. Braxton's buddies started filming me with their phones, creating TikTok content about crazy homeless guy who thinks he owns community property. They were having the time of their lives, documenting what they assumed was my public humiliation. I climbed out slowly, water cascading onto concrete so hot it felt like walking across a barbecue grill. Every drop sizzled and evaporated instantly. "Gentlemen, I'm asking you politely to leave my private property." "Or what, Grandpa?" Braxton stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. This kid was about as threatening as a chihuahua with self-esteem issues. I just smiled that special smile I reserved for suspects who thought they were smarter than cops. "Or I'll call some friends who wear badges." They eventually skulked away, but not before Braxton promised I'd be hearing from his mother real soon. The sound of their designer sneakers squeaking against wet pavement echoed like fingernails on chalkboards as they strutted off, probably already editing their viral masterpiece. Next morning brought my first taste of HOA warfare. A violation notice was taped to my door like a medieval plague warning. "Unauthorized pool usage, $500 fine." I'm reading this thinking, unauthorized usage of my own pool? What's next? Unauthorized breathing in my own house. The phone call to HOA management revealed Regina's master plan. She'd filed a formal complaint claiming my pool disrupted community aesthetic standards and that I was operating an illegal rental property because, get this, I had outdoor patio furniture. Apparently, chairs beside pools were revolutionary concepts in Willowbrook. But here's where my police training kicked in. I remembered something my training sergeant used to say. When someone's trying to screw you legally, check their paperwork first. Criminals always mess up the details. I drove straight to the county recorder's office and pulled every document related to our HOA. What I discovered made my blood pressure spike like a rocket launch. Regina's emergency meeting about my pool violation, held with only 1 hour notice instead of the legally required 72 hours. That little mistake just invalidated every decision made at that meeting. Then I found out she'd been holding these meetings in her living room instead of the designated community center, violating another bylaw. But the real bombshell was buried in financial records. Regina had been collecting illegal special assessments from residents, $200 monthly, for enhanced security services. I called the security company listed on the invoices. They'd never heard of Willowbrook HOA. My elderly neighbor Florence appeared at my mailbox like a guardian angel, slipping me a manila folder thick as a phone book. "I've been documenting everything," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "She's been stealing from us for years." Inside that folder was 2 years of evidence showing Regina billing the HOA for landscaping services provided by Gordon's tech company. Because nothing screams professional lawn care like a cybersecurity firm charging $127,000 to mow grass, right? The invoices were so obviously fraudulent, they looked like they'd been created by a high school student learning Photoshop. Florence explained how the Hendersons had fled after $3,000 in bogus fines, and the Kowalskis sold their dream home rather than fight Regina's legal terrorism. "She finds one technical violation and weaponizes it until people give up," Florence said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. That night, spreading documents across my kitchen table like evidence in a murder investigation, the taste of bitter coffee mixed with righteous fury filled my mouth. Regina thought she was bullying some naive newcomer into submission. She had no idea she'd just handed a veteran sheriff enough evidence to build a federal case. Back in my academy days, we learned about something called selective enforcement, when authorities only apply rules to people they want to punish. It's illegal, discriminatory, and exactly what Regina was doing. 3 days later, Regina showed me exactly how vindictive a cornered HOA dictator could become. I walked outside for my morning shift and found an empty driveway where my pickup truck should have been parked. A neon yellow towing notice was slapped on my garage door like a scarlet letter. Commercial vehicle violation, $400 towing fee plus $50 daily storage. My personal Ford F-150 had been kidnapped because it displayed a tiny sheriff's department decal on the rear window. Apparently, that postage stamp-sized sticker magically transformed my personal vehicle into a commercial threat to neighborhood tranquility. The towing yard was located in an industrial wasteland that smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. Lady called at 5:47 a.m., the clerk explained, sliding paperwork across a counter sticky with ancient coffee stains. Said it was an emergency code violation requiring immediate action. 5:47 in the morning. Regina had been prowling my driveway before sunrise like some kind of suburban predator hunting for violations. While I dealt with automotive hostage negotiations, Regina launched her second attack. An emergency safety inspection was mysteriously scheduled for my property, Saturday at 6 a.m., my only day off in 2 weeks. The official notice claimed anonymous reports of structural hazards requiring immediate professional assessment. But Regina's nuclear option was calling my own department to file a complaint against me. She actually contacted sheriff's headquarters claiming I'd threatened innocent residents while armed and intoxicated during official HOA proceedings. My Sergeant Martinez called that afternoon, barely suppressing laughter. Derek, some suburban warrior, claims you pulled your service weapon on her teenage son, says you were drunk and belligerent at a community meeting? Sarge, you know I don't drink. I've never drawn my weapon off duty in 25 years, and I've never attended a single HOA meeting. The accusation was so absurd it belonged in a comedy sketch about crooked cops. Internal Affairs cleared me faster than you could say frivolous complaint. Regina's story contained more plot holes than a B-movie script, but her false report triggered something beautiful. A mandatory background check that exposed public financial records I'd never examined before. During my academy training, instructors taught us that financial criminals always leave paper trails because they can't resist documenting their cleverness. Gordon's tech company, Digital Solutions LLC, had received $340,000 in federal PPP loans, allegedly covering payroll for 12 employees. According to employment databases, Gordon's company had never employed anyone except Gordon himself. That's not creative accounting. That's federal fraud punishable by decades in prison. Martinez from Financial Crimes nearly choked on his coffee when I shared this discovery. White-collar criminals are hilarious, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. They commit felonies, then file the evidence with federal agencies. It's like robbing banks while live streaming on Facebook. Meanwhile, neighbors were crawling out of hiding like survivors emerging from bomb shelters. Florence introduced me to Carlos Mendoza, a hardworking plumber who'd been slammed with $2,000 in violations for painting his fence unauthorized beige. Regina maintained 17 approved beige shades, and Carlos had committed the unforgivable sin of choosing shade number 18. Janet Kowski, a night shift nurse saving lives at the county hospital, faced harassment for excessive noise violations because her car doors allegedly slammed too loudly when she returned from 12-hour shifts at 3 a.m. Regina had actually filed formal complaints about Janet's Honda Civic creating disruptive acoustic disturbances in the middle of the night. We've been documenting everything in secret, Janet whispered, showing me a hidden Facebook group called Willowbrook Truth Tellers. 47 residents sharing Regina horror stories like underground resistance fighters. The documented abuses were staggering, Christmas decorations deemed excessively festive. Garden gnomes creating visual pollution. One 70-year-old veteran received citations because his garage door squeaked when opening. Every violation carried hefty fines that vanished into mysteriously opaque HOA accounts. But Braxton was escalating into dangerous territory. The spoiled prince started parking his canary yellow Mustang directly across my driveway every morning, physically preventing me from leaving for emergency calls. Kid would sit there with his engine running, music blasting, smirking like he'd discovered the formula for eternal smugness. Time for strategic escalation. I called former partner Mason Torres, now working local patrol. Hypothetically, if someone blocked a peace officer's driveway and interfered with emergency response capabilities, what charges would apply? Interference with law enforcement duties, plus harassment, probably obstruction. Why? Mason arrived 20 minutes later to find Braxton treating my driveway like his personal kingdom. The citation was $275. And Braxton's public meltdown was absolutely magnificent. This pampered prince actually called Mommy while Mason wrote the ticket, shrieking about police harassment and constitutional violations, like he'd suddenly discovered civil rights law. My doorbell camera captured every glorious second of his tantrum, entitled Rich Boy Meeting Real Consequences for the First Time in His Privileged Existence. That evening, organizing my expanding evidence collection, the intoxicating scent of fresh documentation filled my kitchen. Regina thought intimidation would make me vanish like her previous victims. She had no idea every attack was just loading more ammunition into my legal arsenal. Regina's desperation was getting thicker than the humidity hanging over our neighborhood like a wet blanket. She'd hired Mitchell Cross, one of those lawyers who charge $800 an hour to intimidate people with overpriced stationery. His cease and desist letter arrived via certified mail, reeking of expensive cologne and legal threats. The document accused me of malicious defamation, tortious interference with legitimate governance, and, my personal favorite, creating an atmosphere of fear among law-abiding community members. This from a woman who'd been running a criminal enterprise disguised as Suburban management. But Regina's most insidious weapon was her whisper campaign targeting elderly residents who remembered when neighbors trusted each other. She cornered Mrs. Patterson at the mailbox, claiming I was unstable from police trauma and potentially dangerous around children. The bitter irony of a criminal calling a cop threatening wasn't lost on me. Then her spoiled son crossed a line that triggered every protective instinct I'd developed as both a father and law enforcement officer. Braxton started appearing at local businesses where teenagers hung out: the frozen yogurt place, the movie theater, the mall food court. When Florence's granddaughter mentioned that creepy older guy who keeps asking about the new sheriff's daughter, my blood turned to ice water. I immediately contacted prosecutor Helen Vasquez, forwarding Cross's legal threats along with evidence of escalating harassment. Her response came within hours. "Derek, this letter reads like a confession wrapped in expensive legal paper. They're basically admitting guilt while threatening you for exposing their crimes." Helen's prosecutorial experience revealed something crucial I'd missed. When white-collar criminals hire lawyers to send threatening letters, they're usually trying to buy time before federal indictments drop. The specific language in Cross's document showed Regina feared criminal exposure, not civil liability. Years ago, during a financial crimes seminar, I learned about fiduciary duty, the sacred trust placed in people managing other people's money. HOA board members have the same legal obligations as bank executives. When they breach that trust by stealing or misusing funds, they don't just face civil lawsuits, they face criminal charges that can destroy everything they've built. My documentation became forensic-level professional. Every interaction got recorded with timestamps, photographs, and witness statements. My security system expanded to capture Regina's increasingly erratic behavior in prosecutorial quality detail. The community transformation was remarkable. Florence's Willowbrook Accountability Committee drew 30 residents to its first meeting, the largest community gathering in years. Carlos filed complaints with state oversight boards, armed with evidence that would make federal prosecutors salivate. Janet's blog, When Karen Gets a Clipboard, started attracting readers from HOA horror stories nationwide. The state investigation accelerated when 47 formal complaints hit their office simultaneously. Bureaucrats who normally move like molasses suddenly became efficiency experts when facing that level of resident uprising. Regina's final desperate gambit was calling an emergency removal meeting to expel me as a community threat. Her official notice claimed I'd been verbally aggressive toward minors and created ongoing safety hazards requiring immediate intervention. 10 residents showed up armed with evidence of Regina's actual crimes. The meeting lasted 37 minutes before collapsing into beautiful chaos. When Carlos asked where $127,000 in landscaping payments had actually gone, Regina's face turned redder than a lobster in boiling water. She couldn't explain the mysterious payments without admitting to money laundering. She couldn't defend Gordon's PPP loan without acknowledging federal fraud. Every answer would have been a confession, so she just sat there opening and closing her mouth like a fish gasping for air. That's when Mitchell Cross performed the legal equivalent of jumping from a burning building. Smart attorneys know when clients become toxic liabilities, and he withdrew faster than a vampire fleeing sunrise. His official letter cited irreconcilable professional differences. Lawyer speak for, "My client is guilty, and I'm not going to prison with her." The domino effect was spectacular. The HOA's insurance company canceled their directors and officers policy when fraud exclusions triggered. No insurance meant Regina faced personal bankruptcy from incoming lawsuits. The sweet scent of impending justice filled the air like flowers blooming after winter. Meanwhile, my federal contacts were uncovering crimes that would generate newspaper headlines for months. Gordon's tech company had somehow billed county government $550,000 for cybersecurity consulting involving exactly zero actual work. We're talking about systematic fraud targeting taxpayer money at multiple government levels. Braxton's social media presence became increasingly unhinged as family pressure mounted. His Instagram stories showed heavy drinking combined with rambling videos about corrupt neighbors and fake police. The kid was documenting his own mental breakdown for the world to see. That evening, surveying evidence files now requiring 2 banker's boxes, I could taste victory approaching like the first hint of relief after months of holding your breath. Regina's criminal empire was crumbling faster than a sandcastle facing high tide. She'd started this war assuming she could intimidate a naive newcomer into quiet submission. She had no idea she'd just declared war on someone who'd spent 25 years professionally destroying people much smarter and infinitely more dangerous than a suburban sociopath with a clipboard. The bombshell arrived on a Tuesday morning that started with coffee tasting like hope and ended with revelations that could destroy everything. Martinez from Financial Crimes called with news that made my hands shake so badly I nearly dropped my phone. "Derek, we've been digging into Gordon's operation and this thing is massive. You didn't just stumble onto HOA corruption. You found the center of a federal conspiracy." The smell of fresh brewed coffee mixed with the metallic taste of adrenaline as Martinez delivered earth-shattering news. Gordon's tech company wasn't just committing PPP fraud, it was a sophisticated money laundering operation funneling stolen cash from multiple government sources. The $890,000 we discovered was pocket change compared to the real scope. Gordon's been billing county government for cybersecurity services that never existed, Martinez explained, his voice tight with prosecutorial excitement. $550,000 over 3 years for advanced threat protection while providing absolutely nothing. The IT department has no records, no contracts, no evidence of any work being performed. But the revelation that stopped my heart was still coming. While tracking Gordon's financial crimes, federal investigators had uncovered something that made my stomach drop into my boots. The entire Willowbrook development was an environmental disaster, built on illegally filled wetlands with contaminated soil that violated every EPA regulation imaginable. "There's a $2.3 million cleanup liability hanging over your neighborhood," Martinez continued, papers rustling like autumn leaves in the background. "Every homeowner could lose everything when this goes public. The EPA's been investigating since 2019, but someone's been fighting them with expensive lawyers." The puzzle pieces clicked together with the horrifying clarity of a perfect storm approaching. Regina's vicious behavior wasn't petty suburban tyranny, it was terror-driven desperation. She'd known about the environmental catastrophe for years and had been using stolen HOA funds to pay lawyers fighting the federal investigation. Every aggressive move she'd made suddenly made sense. Every resident who questioned her authority threatened to expose her knowledge of crimes that could financially destroy the entire community. She wasn't just stealing money, she was covering up environmental disasters that would bankrupt everyone she claimed to serve. The hidden debt was staggering enough to cause nightmares. EPA documents showed soil contamination, illegal dumping, and destroyed wetlands requiring massive professional remediation. The original developer had vanished into bankruptcy protection, leaving current homeowners holding the financial bag for environmental crimes they never knew existed. But here's where everything flipped like a coin landing on its edge. Regina's desperate campaign to silence me had actually accelerated the federal investigation she'd been fighting for years. Her harassment had drawn law enforcement attention to crimes that might have stayed buried indefinitely. Gordon was already under federal surveillance, with court-authorized wiretaps capturing panicked conversations about hiding assets and destroying evidence. The family was frantically moving money offshore, but federal marshals were faster, already identifying assets for immediate seizure. Braxton's trust fund, built entirely on Daddy's fraudulent government contracts, had been frozen by federal order. The spoiled prince had no idea his entitled lifestyle was about to evaporate like steam from hot asphalt. This environmental revelation changed my entire strategy. Instead of just exposing HOA corruption, I now had to protect innocent neighbors from financial devastation caused by crimes they never committed. Federal cooperation offered something called innocent landowner defense. legal protection for residents who genuinely didn't know about environmental violations. Sitting in my kitchen surrounded by federal documents that reeked of bureaucratic gravity mixed with impending justice, I realized the timeline was accelerating. 6 weeks, maybe less, before everything exploded simultaneously. Regina's criminal empire and the environmental disaster hitting like a 1-2 punch that could level the entire community. Regina thought she was fighting to maintain control over her suburban kingdom. She had no idea she was actually fighting to avoid federal prison while protecting a husband whose crimes had turned their dream life into a house of cards built on a foundation of environmental destruction and systematic fraud. Florence's living room transformed into our underground headquarters, filled with the comforting aroma of her vintage coffee percolator working overtime and the electric energy of people finally fighting back. Her floral-printed sanctuary became mission control for the most important battle our community had ever faced. "Listen carefully," I said, spreading federal documents across her antique dining table like a general planning invasion. "We're not just fighting Regina's corruption anymore. We're racing to protect 63 families from environmental crimes that could bankrupt everyone." Carlos leaned forward, his calloused hands tracing architectural plans with the precision of someone who'd built things that lasted. "I've cleaned up contaminated sites before. The trick is proving homeowners were deceived during purchase. That's our legal armor against developer crimes." Janet was already building digital armies through her blog network. 47 other communities are watching our fight, she explained, laptop screen glowing like a beacon of hope. "We're becoming the poster children for HOA resistance nationwide." Our secret weapon was environmental lawyer Samuel Rivera, whose downtown office reeked of expensive leather and hard-won justice. "Your residents can claim innocent landowner defense," he explained during our strategy session, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd fought federal agencies and won. "But we need rock-solid proof that the developer concealed environmental violations during every property sale." Rivera's legal roadmap was elegant in its simplicity. The federal government actually protects innocent homeowners when developers commit environmental fraud. Our mission was documenting systematic deception that turned dream homes into financial nightmares through no fault of the buyers. Years ago, during a white-collar crime seminar, I learned something that now seemed prophetic. When criminals use shell companies to hide their crimes, prosecutors can pierce the corporate veil and seize everything: houses, cars, personal bank accounts, even jewelry and art collections. Gordon's fake tech company provided zero protection once federal investigators proved criminal intent. The environmental strategy required military-level coordination. Insurance claims were possible if we proved fraud during original development. The HOA's old directors and officers policy might cover resident losses before Regina's crimes voided coverage. Most importantly, federal cooperation meant expedited cleanup with government funding assistance instead of homeowner bankruptcy. Community mobilization felt like watching neighbors discover superpowers they never knew they possessed. Secret meetings rotated between homes to avoid Regina's increasingly paranoid surveillance operations. Florence organized documentation teams with the efficiency of a seasoned campaign manager, officially recording every resident's Regina horror story for legal proceedings. Miguel, Florence's 16-year-old tech wizard grandson, created an encrypted messaging app that would make NSA programmers jealous. "Abuela, this lets everyone coordinate without leaving digital breadcrumbs Regina can follow," he explained while typing code that looked like mathematical poetry. The app was revolutionary. Residents could report violations, share photographic evidence, and coordinate resistance activities without fear of interception. We'd essentially created a neighborhood intelligence network that operated like professional spy operations. Carlos recruited volunteers with accounting backgrounds to audit 5 years of HOA financial records, their expertise turning numbers into prosecutorial weapons. "Every fake invoice tells a story," explained retired bookkeeper Martha Riley, her reading glasses reflecting spreadsheet columns like a scholar studying ancient texts. Regina left fingerprints on every fraudulent transaction. My security expansion happened through official Sheriff's Department community safety programs, perfectly legal and strategically brilliant. High-definition cameras now covered common areas where Regina had previously operated in shadows, her every move documented for federal prosecutors. Janet's legal defense fund raised $52,000 in 3 weeks, proof that people fight harder when they understand what they're protecting. The fund created financial security for legal battles while building community solidarity stronger than family bonds. Our media strategy centered on Rachel Stone, whose investigative journalism background made her eyes light up like Christmas morning when Janet explained our situation. Environmental crime with federal investigations and community uprising? Rachel practically purred over coffee that tasted like impending vindication. This story has everything: corporate villains, environmental disaster, neighborhood heroes, and a sheriff protagonist. It's Pulitzer Prize material. The timing choreography required Swiss watch precision. Federal prosecutors needed community cooperation without interference in criminal proceedings. EPA investigators required resident testimony about developer deception. State oversight boards wanted documented evidence of HOA financial crimes. Everyone had to dance together without stepping on legal toes. My role evolved into community federal liaison, bridging trust between neighbors who'd been betrayed and agencies that could deliver justice. Prosecutor Helen Vasquez appreciated having insider perspective that understood both criminal procedure and victim protection. Derek, residents trust you because you live here, but we trust you because you're law enforcement. That credibility is priceless. Educational seminars became empowerment workshops. Residents learned HOA board recall procedures for removing corrupt leadership legally. Environmental protection strategies helped homeowners understand rights when developers commit crimes. Federal whistleblower protections encouraged reporting suspicious activities, previously ignored out of fear. That evening, surveying battle plans covering every surface of my kitchen like evidence in a major investigation, the sweet taste of approaching justice mixed with protective responsibility for innocent neighbors who'd trusted criminals hiding in designer clothes. Regina assumed time worked in her favor, that federal bureaucracy moved slowly enough for her to escape consequences. She had no idea we were about to unleash perfectly coordinated legal warfare that would make military strategists envious. Regina's desperation stank worse than garbage left rotting in summer heat as federal investigations tightened around her throat like a noose. Her retaliation campaign turned vicious, targeting anyone brave enough to support my investigation with the focused malice of someone who knew prison bars were approaching fast. Carlos became her first sacrifice to bureaucratic warfare. Anonymous tips flooded county code enforcement claiming his plumbing business violated residential zoning laws. Suddenly, official trucks were circling his property like vultures, their diesel engines rumbling threats while uniformed inspectors emerged with clipboards and aggressive attitudes. "They're measuring everything with laser precision," Carlos explained, wiping sweat that smelled like honest work mixed with government harassment. "Yesterday they cited me because my business license decal was allegedly 2 inches larger than regulation size. 2 inches, Derek. They brought rulers." The taste of injustice was bitter as black coffee when I watched $3,000 in bogus violations pile up on Carlos's kitchen table. Unauthorized commercial vehicle storage for parking his work van in his own driveway. Improper business signage for a magnetic door decal smaller than most people's bumper stickers. Regina was weaponizing bureaucracy with surgical precision, but her most pathetic move was hiring Dale Morrison, a private investigator whose surveillance skills would embarrass a mall security guard. This guy followed me with the subtlety of a marching band, driving a bright red sedan that screamed amateur stalker for hire, while pretending to read newspapers upside down. Morrison's incompetence was almost insulting to my professional intelligence. During 15 years of detective work, I'd conducted surveillance operations that caught murderers and drug dealers. This clown couldn't follow a parade without getting lost, photographing my house from public streets like he was conducting some kind of suburban espionage mission. Meanwhile, Braxton escalated to genuine property destruction that documented his own criminal behavior. My truck became his personal art project. Eggs, paintball paint, and chocolate syrup arranged to resemble something much more disgusting. The spoiled prince was creating evidence of vandalism while live streaming his crimes on Instagram like a one-man prosecution team. Regina's nuclear desperation was attempting to liquidate HOA common areas through emergency sale to developer cronies. She called a crisis financial meeting claiming immediate bankruptcy required rapid asset disposal to prevent total community collapse. The meeting reeked of fear sweat mixed with expensive perfume as Regina faced 12 residents armed with questions that demolished her fabricated emergency. "Why are we suddenly bankrupt after years of special assessments?" Florence demanded, her teacher voice carrying authority that made Regina's hands tremble. Carlos produced bank statements showing $47,000 in mysterious withdrawals over 6 months. "Where did this money disappear to?" he asked, papers rustling like ammunition being loaded. "Because none of it went toward community improvements you claim to be funding." That's when Regina's legal protection evaporated faster than water on hot asphalt. Mitchell Cross didn't just withdraw his representation. He filed emergency documents with the State Bar Association, distancing himself from potential criminal charges with the speed of someone fleeing a building fire. My silent preparation was constructing an airtight federal case that would make prosecutors celebrate. Body cameras captured every Regina interaction, creating video evidence of harassment, intimidation, and witness tampering. Her increasingly unhinged behavior was being documented in court-quality detail. Federal wiretap authorization meant Regina's panicked phone conversations were being recorded by professionals who specialized in destroying criminal enterprises. Every desperate call to lawyers, every frantic discussion with Gordon about hiding assets, every threatening conversation about eliminating problem residents was becoming federal evidence. Environmental testing proceeded through secret EPA coordination, with soil samples revealing contamination requiring millions in cleanup costs. But our legal strategy protected innocent homeowners while targeting the criminals who'd created this environmental disaster. The community was fracturing exactly as Regina intended. Some neighbors panicked about environmental liability, terrified their retirement savings would vanish in cleanup costs. Regina exploited these fears like a predator, claiming federal cooperation would only amplify their financial exposure. But others rallied with courage that restored my faith in human decency. Janet's blog attracted national attention from legal experts offering pro bono assistance to HOA corruption victims. Carlos organized neighborhood watch teams documenting every instance of Regina's retaliation campaign. Florence faced direct intimidation when Regina's business associates, men who looked like failed nightclub bouncers, started photographing her house while claiming safety violations requiring immediate professional inspection. The retired teacher who'd survived decades of difficult teenagers wasn't about to be bullied by suburban criminals in overpriced suits. My strategic patience was generating incredible dividends as federal timelines accelerated. Prosecutor Helen Vasquez called with updates that made my morning coffee taste like approaching victory. "Derek, we're expediting the indictment schedule. Regina's desperation is creating new felony charges faster than we can process them." Environmental remediation plans were finalized with community financial protection through federal cooperation and developer liability lawsuits. Our neighbors would be shielded while criminals faced justice. That evening, organizing evidence requiring industrial storage solutions, I could smell Regina's terror mixing with the approaching hurricane of federal accountability. Her attempts to destroy our community were accelerating her own annihilation. She'd assumed this was a neighborhood dispute she could outlast through superior resources and legal intimidation. She had no idea she was about to face the coordinated fury of federal law enforcement backed by a community that had finally discovered its own power. Regina's final gambit reeked of pure desperation, mixed with the acrid smell of a criminal empire burning to ash. She called an emergency community safety meeting to vote on my immediate removal as a clear and present danger to neighborhood security. The woman was so far beyond rational thought she might as well have been speaking in tongues. The meeting notice claimed I'd been verbally threatening minors and creating an atmosphere of terror among law-abiding families. This from someone whose son had been vandalizing my property while she embezzled community funds to pay lawyers fighting federal investigations. But Regina's masterstroke of stupidity was circulating a petition demanding my expulsion, complete with forged signatures that would make a counterfeiting expert weep. The handwriting analysis was so obviously fake it looked like a middle school art project. Same pen, same pressure, same writing angle. Regina had apparently signed 37 different names herself. The taste of impending justice was sweeter than honey as I watched her dig her own legal grave deeper with every desperate move. Forgery is a felony, and she'd just created dozens of additional criminal charges while federal agents monitored her every action. Braxton's behavior hit new lows that crossed from entitled vandalism into genuine assault territory. During what he probably thought was a clever setup, he accidentally bumped into me while his buddies filmed, trying to provoke a reaction that could be edited into evidence of police brutality. The kid's acting skills were about as convincing as a $3 bill. He stumbled into me like he'd been pushed by invisible hands, then dramatically fell backward, clutching his shoulder like I'd shot him. "Police brutality! Excessive force!" He screamed for the cameras, apparently unaware that my body camera was recording everything in high-definition detail. What Braxton didn't realize was that federal surveillance had been documenting his family's crimes for weeks. His staged assault attempt was being recorded by professionals who specialized in building airtight criminal cases. The spoiled prince had just provided prosecutors with video evidence of attempted fraud and filing false police reports. Regina's final desperate play was bribing two remaining HOA board members with promises of legal protection when federal investigations concluded. The conversations happened in her backyard, where she assumed privacy, apparently forgetting that court-authorized wiretaps don't require warrants for outdoor spaces. "Vote with me on Derek's removal, and Gordon's lawyers will protect you from federal charges," she promised Todd Brennan, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had no idea federal agents were recording every word. "We stick together. We all walk away clean." But Todd's response revealed how completely Regina had lost control of her own board. "Regina, I'm not going to prison for your crimes. My family comes first." The sound of chairs scraping concrete as he walked away was like music celebrating the collapse of criminal conspiracies. My counterintelligence operation was reaching beautiful completion as federal evidence mounted beyond any reasonable doubt. Every desperate move Regina made was being documented by professionals who'd spent careers destroying criminal enterprises. Her panic was creating more charges faster than prosecutors could catalog them. Handwriting analysis confirmed Regina had forged multiple petition signatures, dozens of additional felony counts. Her bribery attempts were captured on federal recordings, conspiracy and obstruction charges. Braxton's staged assault was documented by multiple cameras, fraud and filing false reports. The community fracture was becoming a complete breakdown of Regina's authority. Florence organized a counter-petition supporting my continued residence, gathering genuine signatures from residents who'd witnessed Regina's criminal behavior firsthand. 61 households signed within 24 hours, nearly the entire community united against their former dictator. Carlos filed complaints with the state contractors board about Regina's harassment campaign, armed with documentation that would result in professional sanctions for anyone involved in the bogus code enforcement attacks. Janet's blog was attracting legal experts who offered pro bono assistance to communities fighting HOA corruption nationwide. But the most satisfying development was watching Regina's insurance company cancel every policy they'd written for the Whitmore family. Fraud exclusions triggered by federal investigations meant they faced personal liability for every lawsuit coming their way. The smell of financial ruin was stronger than smoke from a house fire. Gordon's assets were being frozen systematically as federal marshals identified properties purchased with fraudulent government money. The Range Rover disappeared from their driveway overnight, seized as evidence of money laundering. Their vacation home in Cabo was locked down by international banking authorities cooperating with U.S. prosecutors. Braxton's social media presence became a public meltdown that would entertain prosecutors for years. His Instagram stories showed increasingly erratic behavior, drunk rants about corrupt neighbors, videos of him destroying property in rage fits, and paranoid theories about deep state conspiracies targeting his family. The kid was documenting his own mental breakdown while creating evidence of alcohol abuse, property destruction, and making threats that would violate his eventual probation terms. Every post was being archived by federal investigators building cases that would last decades. That night, reviewing evidence files that now required professional storage solutions, I could taste victory approaching like the first hint of rain after months of drought. Regina's desperate final moves had created enough criminal charges to send her entire family to federal prison for the rest of their natural lives. She'd started this war assuming she could destroy one troublesome neighbor through superior resources and corrupt connections. She had no idea she was about to face justice delivered by the very community she'd terrorized, backed by federal agencies that specialized in dismantling criminal enterprises disguised as suburban governance. The Willowbrook Community Center had never seen anything like this. What normally hosted 12 board residents discussing lawn care violations was now packed with 89 people filling every folding chair, lining walls, and spilling into the hallway. The air crackled with electricity that you could practically taste. Justice was finally coming to our suburban kingdom. Rachel Stone's news crew set up discreetly in the back corner, their camera equipment humming like mechanical vultures waiting to document Regina's downfall. "Routine community meeting," she'd told the assignment desk, but everyone in that room knew we were about to witness the public execution of a criminal empire. Federal agents positioned themselves around the building's perimeter with the casual invisibility that comes from years of practice. To anyone watching, they looked like maintenance workers and late arrivals, but I recognized the coordinated movements of professionals preparing to serve arrest warrants. Regina entered like she was walking to her own execution, which in many ways she was. Her expensive lawyer replacement, Harrison Kyle, followed behind carrying briefcases that probably cost more than most people's cars. The criminal defense specialist's presence told everyone exactly what kind of trouble Regina was facing. Braxton filmed everything on his phone, apparently planning to edit together some heroic narrative for social media about standing up to corrupt police persecution. The kid had no idea he was documenting evidence that would be used in his own prosecution. The meeting started with Regina's desperate attempt to control the agenda, her voice higher and shakier than usual as she gavelled down residents' questions like a dictator fighting revolution. Tonight's emergency session will address the immediate removal of Derek Castellanos as a threat to community safety and property values. That's when I stood up. The room fell silent except for the mechanical hum of recording equipment and the distant sound of federal vehicles idling outside. 25 years of law enforcement had taught me that sometimes justice requires perfect timing and absolute confidence. "Regina," I said, my voice carrying the authority that comes from wearing a badge for a quarter century. "Before we discuss my removal, I think this community deserves to know the truth about your criminal enterprise." Her face drained of color faster than water disappearing down a storm drain. Harris and Kyle immediately started whispering urgent legal advice that probably involved the words "shut up" and Fifth Amendment. "I've been your neighbor for 8 months, I continued, producing federal investigation documents from a folder thick as a phone book. "Tonight, I'm speaking as a 25-year law enforcement veteran who spent the last 6 months documenting systematic fraud, embezzlement, and environmental crimes. The taste of absolute victory filled my mouth as I watched Regina realize her world was collapsing in real time. Regina Whitmore, you're under citizen's arrest for embezzlement of community funds, conspiracy to commit fraud, and violation of fiduciary duty." The room erupted as federal agents entered on cue, their movements synchronized like a perfectly choreographed dance of justice. Agent Martinez flashed his credentials while reading Miranda rights in a voice that carried the weight of federal authority. "Regina Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of federal environmental investigations." The metallic click of handcuffs closing around her wrists sounded like the final chord of a symphony celebrating accountability. But the real fireworks started when I explained the environmental protection we'd secured for innocent residents. Through federal cooperation, every homeowner in this community is protected from liability for crimes you and Gordon committed. The cleanup will be funded through asset forfeiture and developer lawsuit settlements. Florence was nominated as interim HOA president by unanimous voice vote that shook the building's foundation. Carlos was elected to oversee environmental remediation, his construction expertise finally recognized by neighbors who'd watched Regina try to destroy him. Janet became community communications director, her transparency initiatives replacing Regina's secretive dictatorship. When they offered me a board position, I declined with the humility that comes from understanding public service. "I'm here to serve and protect this community, not rule it. You deserve leaders who answer to you, not the other way around." Rachel Stone's news crew captured every moment of Regina's perp walk, the entitled HOA dictator finally facing consequences for years of criminal behavior. Her designer heels clicked against concrete like a countdown timer reaching zero as federal agents guided her toward vehicles that would transport her to a future behind bars. Braxton's live-streamed meltdown was spectacular entertainment that would generate viral content for months. The spoiled prince actually tried to physically interfere with his mother's arrest, earning his own set of handcuffs and charges for obstruction of justice. The community solidarity was beautiful to witness. Neighbors who'd lived in fear for years were finally speaking freely, sharing stories of Regina's abuses while supporting each other through the emotional aftermath of discovering they'd been victimized by criminals hiding behind suburban respectability. As federal vehicles disappeared into the night carrying the Whitmore family toward their appointments with justice, the sweet smell of freedom mixed with evening air that hadn't felt this clean in years. The HOA kingdom was dead. Long live the community. 6 months later, Willowbrook's transformation smelled like fresh possibilities mixed with the sweet scent of wetland restoration and genuine community harmony. Regina received 18 years in federal prison. Justice served colder than her heart had ever been. Gordon got 22 years for masterminding their criminal empire, his fake tech kingdom crumbling into very real prison bars. Braxton's poetic justice was almost too perfect. 3 years probation with 2,000 hours of environmental cleanup community service. The spoiled prince who'd ordered me out of my own pool was now spending weekends hauling contaminated soil under the blazing sun, sweat mixing with the taste of humble pie he'd never eaten before. The $2.3 million environmental cleanup was completed ahead of schedule, funded entirely through Whitmore asset seizures and developer lawsuit settlements. Not one innocent homeowner paid a penny for crimes they never committed. The restored wetlands became a natural paradise where children now catch fireflies and families watch sunset reflections dance across clean water. Property values soared 23% after restoration, proof that environmental justice and community accountability create real wealth for honest people. What Regina had tried to hide became our neighborhood's crown jewel. Florence's transparency revolution as HOA president brought sunshine to every dark corner where corruption had festered. Monthly financial reports published online satisfied the most demanding auditors, while her Willowbrook Accountability Initiative became a nationwide model for HOA reform. Carlos's construction cooperative thrived as neighbors discovered the joy of supporting honest local business over criminal enterprises. His environmental expertise made him the region's go-to contractor for community restoration projects. The man Regina tried to destroy with fake violations now teaches environmental remediation at 3 community colleges. Janet's blog, When Karen Gets a Clipboard, exploded to 150,000 subscribers nationwide, connecting victimized communities with legal resources that turn individual suffering into collective victories. Her investigation techniques help families fight back against HOA corruption with professional-grade documentation. My personal healing exceeded every hope I'd harbored during those dark divorce months. Lucia moved in permanently, thriving in a community that values character over appearances. Her award-winning environmental science project about our wetland restoration is now used in high school curricula across the state. Romance bloomed where I least expected it. Maria Santos, the environmental scientist overseeing our cleanup, shared my passion for justice mixed with practical problem-solving. Our relationship grew like the native plants she'd specified, naturally, beautifully, built to weather any storm. The smell of her hair mixed with wetland flowers during evening walks creates memories sweeter than any victory. Our Regina Whitmore Environmental Scholarship awards $15,000 annually to students pursuing environmental protection careers, funded entirely by recovered fraud money. Florence's brilliantly ironic naming ensures Regina's crimes forever support the causes she tried to destroy. The annual Accountability Festival draws families from neighboring communities who want to learn how ordinary residents can defeat extraordinary corruption. Children play games while parents attend workshops on financial transparency and environmental protection. The sound of laughter mixing with educational seminars proves that justice served properly creates lasting joy. My law enforcement conference presentations help other officers recognize financial crimes hiding behind suburban respectability. HOA fraud investigation techniques has become required training in 12 states, protecting communities from predators who weaponize governance for personal gain. The practical knowledge we share protects families nationwide. Mandatory annual HOA audits prevent theft through transparency. Environmental due diligence before home purchases saves families from developer crimes. Federal whistleblower protections empower communities to fight corruption without fear. Professional mediation resolves conflicts before they explode into legal warfare. These warm summer evenings, floating peacefully in my pool while listening to children's laughter echoing across restored wetlands, the taste of victory has mellowed into something infinitely sweeter. The satisfaction of justice served with environmental healing and community bonds stronger than any HOA covenant. The gentle sound of clean water flowing through natural channels, the intoxicating fragrance of native wildflowers attracting butterflies that dance like living jewels, the comforting texture of neighborhood solidarity built through shared struggle. These are the rewards when good people refuse to accept corruption disguised as authority. Florence waves from her garden where she's teaching her great-grandchildren to plant native species. Carlos and his family barbecue in their backyard, no longer fearing bogus violation notices. Janet types her latest blog post about communities that fought back and won. This is what victory looks like, not just defeating criminals, but building something beautiful from the ashes of their corruption. Share your HOA nightmare stories in the comments. Let's support each other and build communities where justice isn't just possible, it's inevitable. And don't forget to subscribe to Karen Stories for more tales of accountability served with environmental protection and community healing. Because when neighbors unite against corruption, even the most powerful criminals learn that karma always comes back around, and it brings federal agents, restored wetlands, and friendships that last forever.